Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another upgrades video. In today's upgrades video, we are once again taking a look at my HK SP5. And before we get this video started, the best way you can support everything I do here on the Firearm Freedom channel is to check out some of the Firearm Freedom merchandise. I have a lot of awesome t-shirts. It's the very first link down in the description below, and I seriously appreciate you guys repping the brand. If you want to help defeat these YouTube algorithms, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, like the video, comment down below. All of that stuff should ensure that these videos continue to pop up in your subscription feed. Man, the HK SP5 has had a little bit of an upgrade session, and I am digging it quite a bit. Now, I know a lot of my purist folks out there are reeing hard on the keyboard right now and screaming at me for what I have done to the HK SP5. And I get it. I understand. The classic HK MP5 look is by far king. And here's the deal, guys. I have two MP5 variations in the collection. One is this wonderful HK SP5 that is phenomenal in every way, shape, and form. And the other option is the PTR, which you guys know is not one of my favorites. And that's a gun that I really don't consider using for any sort of real-world use. I don't find it reliable, and for that reason, I've kept the PTR in kind of a cool OG look with the collapsible stock, with the wide handguard. All of those things are going to stay the same on the PTR to let me kind of live out my cool, nostalgic MP5 fantasies. With the SP5, I wanted to use this and kind of set this up as more of a hard use PCC and do everything I would want a hard use PCC to do. And that is have some nice accessories, have accessories to make me able to shoot the gun a little faster and make it just overall a slightly more practical package. Now, you guys saw the new stock upgrade that I did to the SP5 in the standalone video, which was for the AC Unity MP5 stock. This stock is phenomenal. I have absolutely no complaints about it, especially with the price point that the stock is at. And I think you are just getting a ton of value in this stock. And quite frankly, it just meshes overall so well with the build that I'm doing here on the SP5. A lot of these upgrades were made possible by Midwest Industries. As always, full disclosure, what is my relationship with Midwest Industries? They did not pay me for this video or anything like that, but they did send me this handguard and this claw mount to check out here on the channel for this SP5 video. I reached out to them, said, hey, I'm putting together this SP5 video. Do you guys want to send some stuff along? They said, absolutely. So we got their M-LOK handguard, and that's kind of the first eye-catching piece to this build that I did that goes really away from your traditional MP5 appearance. But I have to say, Midwest did a phenomenal job with this M-LOK handguard. They meshed the lines perfectly in every angle, and what makes this better than, say, the PTR M-LOK handguard or other M-LOK handguards out there is those ones tend to stop right in this position where your front sight post begins, and that kind of sucks. It ruins the look of it, and it also cuts back on your mounting space. Midwest Industries went ahead and actually angled it all the way out to the end here, so you have a flush fitting rail all the way out to the barrel, and it dips around and gives you a longer position to mount a light, which, as you can see, is what I'm doing here. So that is phenomenal. I love this rail, and I actually think the look of the rail is great. And for the price of it, it comes in, I think, at like 110 bucks or 120 bucks, depending on where you're buying it. I think is more than reasonable for a very rugged, high-quality M-LOK rail that's going to give you M-LOK positions all the way around the rail, and also QD spots on the left and right-hand side on the SP5, which, as you guys can see, I'm utilizing there. The only thing I was not sure about was their claw mount. So claw mounts on roller delayed guns as a whole really are lacking. You're looking at a gun that is much older just in the technology that is going on here, and especially when it comes to Picatinny rails. That's why a lot of US variations of the MP5 have just welded on pick rails, because it kind of alleviates any weird issues with a claw mount on your MP5 variation. But in this case, we have a tried and true H&K variation that is going to only use your traditional claw mount. And you have these two little indentations on the receiver itself that claws dig into and allow it to hold in place. And then there's also a small position that is poking up on the receiver that sticks into the rail itself to prevent it from moving forward and backwards. So the rails out there, they have a lot of really unique, ultra low profile rails, which I think are phenomenal, and that's really cool. The Midwest Industries is rather low, but it's kind of on the middle ground spectrum there of height with MP5 rails. This really gets it down low enough so that you're not getting like a lower neck weld on the back of the stock here, because some Optic mounts and the optics themselves are just far too high on the MP5, even for night vision use. It's ridiculous. I see some people using like lower 1/3 AR mounts on top of their claw mount on their MP5, which is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But in this case, the Midwest Industries claw mount is actually pretty phenomenal. It is a little bit bulky, but it's very robust. I have no complaints about it, and once I mounted it, I was pretty happy with it. Now, when it came to deciding an optic for the SP5, man, I had quite the debate going along in my mind, and I had a few different options floating around. I thought maybe an EXPS 3-0, but then I started realizing after I got the claw mount on that a quick detach EOTech is just way too high on there. And I saw the 512 in the collection sitting on something that I wasn't using all that often, and I was like, man, I wonder what that would look like. And I Googled a few pictures. The 512s with the wide handguards and other things, just it wasn't really looking right. And on top of that, when it was mounted forward a little bit too much, it just wasn't necessarily lining up properly. And then I decided to just give it a shot and throw it on top of this rail, and man, does it have a vibe. I don't know what it is about it. There is just a vibe to a chunky EOTech on top of an MP5. It just looks sick. And on top of that, because it's the OG 512, it is not QD, so I could sit it as low as possible. And I actually reached it back a little bit. And you can see here that now the front is a little bit flush fitting and the back is kind of hanging off a bit. But I didn't have any issues with zeroing or holding zero, because the two Picatinny points that are holding this optic in place are still firmly seated on the rail itself. So I had no other issues with this thing walking. And guys, I gotta say, it is phenomenal. The speed that you get through this large window up in the front and that big EOTech holographic reticle is unmatched. It is phenomenal how quick you can shoot this rifle with that configuration. Originally, I was looking at kind of like an MRO with a low mount, because that also just has the vibe. As much as the MROs kind of suck, I do think that it's not a terrible option for a PCC close in and all that good stuff. But if you go on a low mount with something like that, not only are you not going to be able to co-witness with your front sight post, but you're cutting right in the middle of the hood of the front sight post on most setups. So that's super annoying that your dot is going to be basically right here instead of right here, and I feel like that's going to kind of get in the way a lot. So the EOTech goes far above the sights. No, you can't use your sights, but it's not really the end of the world. I was able to borrow this mod light from a buddy. I actually wanted to go with a Surefire M300, but in order to get this video up with speed, full transparency, I just did not have the money set aside to buy an M300 with the increased prices that those are at right now. And then on top of that, to buy a mount and to buy the cable, because Surefire is going to be really stupid and add on like $300 just to freaking mount the light to the gun itself. So that's what I'm going to be going to in the future. I'm going to be going to a Surefire M300 Scout, probably the Pro model, so I could hug it real tight up against that M-lock there. And then I'm going to get the standard Surefire pressure pad without the constant on button, and I'm going to loop that right down to this vert grip and just wrap it with some goon tape. And you guys can see that that is actually what I did with my buddy's mod light. We got the OKW head on this thing. It is wild bright. The amount of candela and reach that this light has is way overkill for an HK SP5, but it works and it looks phenomenal, and it was great to have for this video, so I'm very appreciative of that. He has a hot button on here, and I was trying to figure out a way to attach this hot button to the M-lock rail. And that's one of the biggest issues with an MP5, especially the Ks, is you do not have a lot of rail space up here. So I went with the BCM vert grip, and in finding a bunch of different options that just didn't work with the hot button, everywhere I mounted it, it was getting in the way somehow. So I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna slap it right on that vert grip and just use a boatload of goon tape and see what happens. And surprisingly, this worked great. It had absolutely no issues at all. I can still get to the light, no problem, especially when I have my hand in the proper position. I just simply have to rotate my finger back a little bit and I can get to the light without issue. Even if I transition, I can just simply dip down with my thumb, or I could even grip hard with my palm and it's going to turn the light on. I was not having any ND issues with the light. You just got to watch how tight you're wrapping the tape right around the button itself. But I think this is the move for an MP5. Ultimately, I wanted to go with a CAC quad rail on this and just really go for the vibes. But at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm just not paying $700 or $800 for a freaking rail for this gun. I'm just not doing it. And those rails are not worth that much money. They're phenomenal rails. In my opinion, they're worth maybe 300 bucks, and that was when they were available. They're not available anymore, and the prices are skyrocketing. And at those prices, it's just stupid. It's not worth the buy. I also think when I go with the small Surefire pad, it's going to fit a lot more flush on the vert grip and work out even better in this configuration, so I'm really liking that so far. Rolling with a Blue Force Gear sling on the back. You guys know I love these slings. It's by far one of the best slings that you could buy. I have a QD point up on the M-lock rail, and this is the only other complaint I had about the AC Unity stock, is that they only have the QD swivel on the left-hand side of the stock. That works okay, but for my preference, I would much rather have it over here on the right-hand side. Just lines up a lot better, especially when I am shouldering the rifle. I was running this primarily suppressed in this range video with my Dead Air Ghost 45 suppressor in the K configuration. I was running it like this because if I was going to run it in any situation for a defensive use, it would be in the small K configuration. That just, it is what it is. That would be how I would run the gun. And although it was nowhere near as quiet as a full-size suppressor would be on this setup, and the other ones that I've tried, like the Tyon Grenadier full-size 45 can, that was a very quiet setup. This is not that quiet, but it is very short, and with 147s, the gun still ran just fine. It was still quiet, and in a defensive situation, it cuts the edge off just enough that I'm not going to be blowing my eardrums out, but it still is very small and compact. So this is huge. I really dig that on the end of this gun, and when it is on the end, man, does that tri-lug just look phenomenal. It mates so well, and honestly, the mod light with the lines here go into the suppressor so much. My buddy that allowed me to borrow the light for the video immediately called that out. He's like, oh dude, it matched up perfectly with the suppressor, and it took me a second. I looked at it, I'm like, holy crap, it does, and that just, it was such an awesome setup. So I think this is a phenomenal gun. Really excited about this. Every time I get it out of the safe, it's like the polar opposite of the PTR. I just love it more and more the more that I shoot this gun, and I am so excited to see where the SP5 goes over time, getting more rounds down range through it, and just see how it continually progresses in the collection. So that is going to wrap up this upgrades video on the SP5. If you guys have any other questions about this build or anything else on the channel, let me know down in the comments below. You guys know I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to that description for ways to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.